Hello everyone. In my Will It Run video about this 1966 Mustang, the fuel gauge didn't work.
That fuel gauge has not really moved or barely moved. There might be a problem with that. There's only a small amount of gas in the tank according to the gauge, like less than an eighth of the tank. So I'm going to put 5 gallons of fresh fuel in it. See if that helps.
That didn't help the gauge or help the engine start.
Okay, so this is only a 1/4 inch line. I managed to squeeze it on there a little bit. I hope it's enough so it doesn't get blown off. And then this tube goes into here to catch it. So I've got this click-clack pump hooked up. It's pulling gas out of that can down there. And the output of that pump is going directly into the carburetor. You can hear it running there. Well, there's a good chance this thing's going to run now.
It took 5 minutes and 38 seconds from the time the engine started until the time the gas finally hit the diversion bottle.
And meanwhile, that pump isn't really doing anything. The oil pressure gauge just came right up. Looks pretty happy. Fuel gauge not so much.
I ended up doing a video about fixing the fuel gauge.
The fuel pump is still not pumping anything. Pumped a couple tablespoons full when it first started up, and that's it.
Later, I discovered there was an old plastic inline fuel filter back by the tank. It was basically above the rear end. I've since removed it and replaced it with some rubber fuel line.
Still no fuel pressure coming up from the pump. Runs pretty nice for not having been started. Oh, here comes the fuel.
I had to wonder why that took so long.
Okay, the gas finally found its way up here from the tank. I'm just going to let it go ahead and clear the lines out, put some fresh gas in there. It came out looking pretty bad. Hopefully that'll clear up a bit and then I'll reconnect the fuel line.
I discovered later that no matter what I did, this fuel tank would always be the source of fuel contamination.
So according to the oil pressure gauge, it's still doing good. I really haven't seen the fuel tank fuel gauge move.
And so it became time to work on the fuel gauge. Removing the sender begins with draining all the fuel out of the tank. I opted to use a click-clack pump to remove most of it. I jacked up the front end to shift all the gas to the back of the tank. I got almost 5 gallons this way. Then I drained the rest.
I don't know how tight this is. I should be able to get it with this wrench, we'll see. And even though I substantially drained the tank, I have this very big pan here that I'm going to try to catch whatever comes out here in. Yeah, that's really stuck. So this is the centerpiece on my distributor wrench. It's a cheap one, but this looks like it's 3/8, and it is. So that can be helpful. boy. So an adapter 3/8 drive to 1/2 inch. And a nice long 1/2 inch drive breaker bar. Gotta be careful there. I felt the tank give a little bit here. Actually bent the tank. Now that that's broken loose, I probably don't need that much force. Maybe it's not that loose. Okay. It's getting ready to come. Yeah, smells like old gas. Okay. Well, we'll just let that drain out till it's done.
In the course of attempting to fix the fuel gauge, it gradually became apparent that my problems weren't just of an electronic nature. But at this point, I thought I was going to remove the level sensor and just replace it, and I'd be done. You may or may not remove the level sender when you're replacing a fuel tank, but since I was doing it anyway, and I didn't know I was replacing the tank yet, this is how it's done. The level sender wire from the gauge just pulls off its terminal. Then there's 2 hose clamps to remove from the rubber fuel line. With an old rubber line that's been stuck on there for years, I usually grab each end one at a time and try to partially twist them around a bit just to break them loose. Then twist back and forth while pushing or pulling the rubber tube off the end of the steel line.
Boy, okay. I'll have to replace this little piece of hose anyway. Now I've got to work this retaining ring off. Turns counterclockwise to come off. It's got these little tabs here to bang on. This thing's spewing gasoline at me when I bang on it.
Penetrating lube made a big difference. Saw it move a little bit. Alright, here we go.
Oh, look at that. There's no float on there. No wonder it's not moving. And boy, there's a lot of rust on this thing.
This is a bad omen.
It's rusty and crusty. I'll have to have a good look inside the tank.
Brace yourself. It isn't easy to see inside. There's the level sender float. It's not easy to see below the varnish muck, but there's a lot of flaked off rust in there. The inside of the tank is deeply rusted. It appears to be beyond saving, so it's time to remove it. To remove the fuel tank, start by removing the hose clamps from the filler neck.
There's a cable on the gas cap to keep it from falling or from getting lost. There's actually a little bolt through here that holds that body. Actually holds it to the filler neck flange. There it is. So there's 5 screws here that hold this filler neck flange in place. They appear to be 5/16. And they're just little sheet metal screws, which don't seem to be that tight. They're certainly not stuck. Okay, this filler neck is connected to the top of the tank with a rubber hose, which is very hard and stiff. For all I know, this is original. It's been on here since the car was new in 1966. So this is going to be kind of interesting. So what I normally do on a rubber hose anyway is grab it with a pair of pliers and give it a twist to see if I can make it move. And that's moving actually. Oh, it also broke loose from the back of the car here. Just by moving it a little like this. This wasn't so bad after all. Oh, it's cracking. Cracking and splitting. I'm gonna need a new one, and I didn't order it when I ordered the tank, so another delay. It's my own fault. Wow, tight fit. A little bit of rust in here too. Not so bad though, I think I can just clean that up. And the gasket on the back here is actually cork. So I'll need one of those as well. And one of these to replace this ancient cracked brittle one.
I didn't know how stuck the tank would be, and I didn't want to do any more damage than absolutely necessary, which I figured would happen by using prying tools against sheet metal. So I thought I'd try slowly jacking up on a corner of the tank to see if it would separate from its trunk frame. It actually popped out very nicely. The sheet metal around the fuel tank needed some rust prevention treatment. I started with a wire cut brush in my old Makita angle grinder. I'm not shooting for perfection. I just want a clean 95% rust-free surface for the Rust-Oleum primer to adhere to. I know from experience that after painting these surfaces with Rust-Oleum, they'll be protected for years to come. But I'm looking into other modern rust prevention coatings to protect most of the bottom of the Mustang with in the future. My thoughts right now are to coat the bottom side with Eastwood's Rust Encapsulator Plus. It goes right over and adheres to rust with minimal surface prep to seal out air and corrosives, and it looks nice. Once that's done, I'm thinking I can coat it all with fluid film or surface shield to provide an additional self-healing layer of protection. That will seal everything the encapsulator might not creep into. Please let us know if you've had success with any of the modern rust mitigation products, or if you have an alternative strategy to what I'm currently considering. I probably won't be starting that project until next year or later. So I only want to paint the surface here. I only have black Rust-Oleum. I'm going to paint just the mating surface here where the tank sits and basically covers most of it. So I'm going to go ahead and mask off up above here, even though it's just primer. And then sometime in the future, I hope to be able to find the color match paint for the trunk as well as the body. No time like right away to start taking the masking off.
I especially don't want to leave it on because the tape is on the primer that I put down, which isn't even fully cured yet. Okay, so here's the final result. I think it turned out all right. This isn't for beauty, this is just to protect the steel from rusting any further than it already has. No one's ever going to see it.
Now it's still too difficult to get enough light in there to really get a good image and show you what's in there. But now that the tank's had a couple of days to dry out, listen to this. Well, you can hear the float in there too, but listen to that. Hear all that crud? Loose crud. That's all rust flakes that flaked off the inside of the tank. And there's nothing I can do to treat it so it'll stop that. It's just going to continue. So that's why I'm replacing this tank. Even though structurally it's probably still sound, the interior surfaces are all rust and just gradually disintegrating, causing a mess inside the tank that will work its way up through the fuel lines and through the filter, maybe clog the fuel filters. So it's time for a new tank. Well, the fuel tank has finally arrived. It's Dorman brand, and I have to say I'm very pleased with its appearance. It's got a nice paint job. It's a galvanized steel tank, and then it's coated with more anti-rust paint. So I'm pleased with that. I don't have to paint it. I was worried I'd have to paint it, and I'm kind of running out of time now. It's close to winter. So the only thing is that this flange, the edges are a little bit wavy, especially in this corner and that corner. So I'm just going to try to flatten it out a little bit. I got it raised up on this 2x8. And I'm just going to try to flatten it out a little bit. That's a little better. Doesn't look as bad on this side. That's quite a bit better.
Installing the gas gauge sending unit begins with inserting the rubber seal right here. It just sits in the groove there. It's really nothing that holds it in. This is right side up for the fuel sender, but the tank's upside down, so flip it over. Make sure that rubber seal is in the groove where it belongs. And don't forget there's those two tabs. There's a slot and a tab on each side to orient it properly. And the retaining ring. And the retaining ring slides in under these three locking tabs. Rotate it clockwise as far as you can by bare hand, and then you drive it home. I'm going to rotate the retaining ring until it's fully seated. And that's as far as she goes. And I was checking this drain plug for tightness. It doesn't budge. I assume they tightened it before they painted it. So this flange surface and the mating surface on the bottom of the trunk that this sits on are not perfectly flat, and they probably need some type of a sealant. I'm not sure. I don't know what they used originally. This actually popped out a lot easier than I thought it was, the old tank. So what I'm going to use is some of this foam sealant. Three-quarters of an inch wide. Just put it right along the edge there. It's sticky. Sticky on one side. This is Frost King rubber foam self-stick weather seal, 3/4 inch wide by 5/16 inch thick by 10 feet long. Minimum compression, it says. Well, I think it'll compress well down to less than 1/8 of an inch. Fills gaps from 5/16 inches down to 1/8 inch. Ideal for automotive and marine use. So this should fill the gaps. That was the front of the tank. This is the back. Now I have to just butt this edge up against that. So it occurred to me that this foam might be able to absorb moisture, so I'm preemptively saturating it with fluid film.
Hopefully the fluid film doesn't harm the rubber foam, but if it does, it won't be too difficult to replace.
I'm not sure why this is the only spot the fuel tank gets a bolt, except that maybe this is to make sure that it has a solid ground to the frame. Just using an awl here to make sure I'm lined up with that hole. Maybe now I'll put one on the other side. There are two little wire straps here to hold this wire. They go under two of the screws on the front of the tank here. I'm putting this hose clamp back on here because I'm going to use that additional ground wire that was there. Hose clamp. Hose clamp. Here, I can put this on here now. Boy. It's a tight fit. I guess that's good. Boy, I think that's 3/8 and that's 5/16. Son of a gun. Yep. The outlet on this sending unit here is bigger than that tube there. That's 5/16, that's 3/8. This might only be a quarter. Pretty small. So I'm going to have to work this hose onto it. That's pretty good. This is brand new fuel line, fuel hose right here. Huh.
I bent the steel line a little to make it line up better.
Have to use a new clamp here. And I'm going to go ahead and use this ground that someone added to the sending unit, because I don't know how well grounded the tank is, or how well grounded the sending unit is to the tank. So that's that. Time to go back up above.
I used a plastic Bondo spreader to scrape the residual cork gasket off the filler neck flange surface on the body. I was trying to avoid scraping the paint under the dry old cork. Okay, it fits. Now remember to put the hose clamps on. Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.
Well, I put about 7 gallons in, I think, and that's where the gauge came up to. That's lower than I expected, but from what I understand, this thing has a large reserve, so when it's on empty, you really have maybe a couple gallons left. I won't know how well this is working until I actually fill it all the way up to the top, but that's not going to be till next spring. This is November. The Mustang's not going to be filled up until next spring.
Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.